Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, and this channel is dedicated toward educational matters. Usually we study up on theories of everything, cosmologies that are all encompassing, but people don't know anything about them. Usually proffered by somebody who spent their whole life working on it and did so with you know, great persistence and never got recognized. Uh, but for whatever reason, I've studied it, and I think that it's something important for people to learn. Today is the 157th video that we've done on the reciprocal system of theory. This was a theory that was put forward by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. He died back in 1990, started his work about 60 years before then, and had about a 25 year period of incubation during which he was doing mainly inductive work. And then he turned that around once he came up with his fundamental postulates in the late 1950s. Then he turned it around and started doing deductive work and began to write books and articles. And he wrote many books, many articles. He has a basic, two basic postulates, and he derives an entire theoretical universe from those. The basic idea is that we live in a universe of motion, not a universe of matter and not a universe of energy. Energy and matter are merely kinds of motion. And motion is the relationship between space and time. Space and time are therefore reciprocals of each other, hence the reciprocal system of theory. And motion is basically a fraction, with time or space as the denominator and space or time as the numerator. And space and time really have no independent existence. They only exist together in motion. Space and time are not the container of the universe, rather they are the contents of the universe. Space and time both have their coordinate aspects, meaning that they are 3 or more dimensions, and they both have their clock aspects, meaning that they progress. They are always getting later and later, or in the idea of space, always getting farther and farther apart. And space and time both come only in discrete units. There is a minimum unit of space and a minimum unit of time. And 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time, 1/1, is the speed of light. And so the speed of light, which makes sense in a universe of motion, the speed of light is the default or the origin of the universe. The universe is not measured from 0. It is measured from the speed of light, meaning that half of the universe is moving faster than the speed of light, and half of the universe is moving slower than the speed of light. That half that's moving slower, Larson calls that the material sector, and that's the sector that Einstein is referring to, where he says nothing moves faster than the speed of light. But Einstein is not referring to what Larson calls the cosmic universe, the half of the universe that's moving faster than the speed of light, where the rule is that nothing moves slower than the speed of light. One sector, the material sector, is a sector that we know about. The cosmic sector is a sector that we don't know anything directly about, but because of the reciprocal relation between space and time, we recognize that everything about that universe is something that we know, because all you have to do to understand the cosmic universe is to invert the material universe. So the cosmic universe is exactly the same as the material universe, except that space and time are inverted. The relationships are inverted. So if you have something over here in the material sector, you have exactly its reciprocal over in the cosmic sector. And that will come into play, I think, even in this chapter here that we're about to start. We're looking at his 1979 book called Nothing But Motion, that covers primarily physics and a little bit of organic chemistry. And we are about to start chapter 7, which is called high-speed motion. Now, when he refers to high-speed motion, he's basically talking about motion faster than the speed of light. But for now, I will be done talking out of my mouth, and I will begin to speak Larson's words read right off here of chapter 7. As brought out in chapter 3, the space of our ordinary experience, extension space, as we have called it, is simply a reference system, and it has no real physical significance. But the relationships that are represented in this reference system do have physical meaning. For example, if the distance between object A and object B in extension space is x, then if A moves a distance in the direction AB, while B remains stationary with respect to the reference system, the two objects will come in contact. The contact has observable physical results, and the fact that it occurs at the coordinate position reached by object A after a movement defined in terms of the coordinates from a specific initial position in the coordinate system demonstrates that the relation represented by the difference between coordinates has a definite physical meaning. Einstein calls this a metrical meaning, that is, a connection between the coordinate differences and measurable lengths and times. To most of those who have not made any critical study of the logical basis of so-called modern physics, it probably seemed obvious that this kind of a meaning exists, and it is safe to say that comparatively few of those who now accept Einstein's relativity theory, because it is the orthodox doctrine in its field, realize that his theory denies the existence of such a meaning. But any analysis of the logical structure of the theory will show that this is true, and Einstein's own statement on the subject, previously quoted, leaves no doubt on this score. This is a prime example of a strange feature of the present situation in science. The members of the scientific community have accepted the basic theories of modern physics as correct, and are quick to do battle on their behalf if they are challenged. Yet at the same time, the majority are totally unwilling to accept some of the aspects of those theories that the originators of the theories claim are essential features of the theoretical structures. How many of the supporters of modern atomic theory, for example, are willing to accept Heisenberg's assertion that atoms do not, quote, exist objectively in the same sense as stones or trees exist, end quote? Probably about as many as are willing to accept Einstein's assertion that coordinate differences have no metrical meaning. At any rate, the present general acceptance of the relativity theory as a whole, regardless of the widespread disagreement with some of its component parts, makes it advisable to point out just where the conclusions reached in this area by development of the consequences of the postulates of the reciprocal system differ from the assertions of relativity theory. This chapter, therefore, will be devoted to a consideration of the status of the relativity concept, includes the extent to which the new findings are in agreement with it. Chapter 8 will then present the full explanation of motion at high speeds as it is derived from the new theoretical development. It is worth noting in this connection that Einstein himself was aware of, quote, the eternally problematic character of his concepts, and in undertaking the critical examination of his theory in this chapter, we are following his own recommendation, expressed in these words, quote, this is Einstein, in the interest of science, it is necessary over and over again to engage in the critique of these fundamental concepts in order that they may not unconsciously rule us. This becomes evident especially in those situations involving development of ideas in which the consistent use of the traditional fundamental concepts leads us to paradoxes difficult to resolve. End quote. Back to Larson. In spite of all the confusion and controversy that have surrounded the subject, the factors that are involved are essentially simple, and they can be brought out clearly by consideration of a correspondingly simple situation, which for convenient reference we will call the two-photon case. Let us assume that a photon X originates at location O in a fixed reference system and moves linearly in space at unit velocity, the velocity of light, as all photons do. In 1 unit of time, it will have reached a point X in the coordinate system, 1 spatial unit distant from O. This is a simple matter of fact that results entirely from the behavior of photon X, and is totally independent of what may be done by or to any other object. Similarly, if another photon Y leaves point O simultaneously with X and travels at the same velocity, but in the opposite direction, this photon will reach point Y, 1 unit of space distant from O, at the end of 1 unit of elapsed time. This, too, is entirely a matter of the behavior of the moving photon Y, and is independent of what happens to photon X or to any other physical object. At the end of 1 unit of time, as currently measured, X and Y are thus separated by 2 units of space in the coordinate system of reference. In current practice, some repetitive physical process measures time. This process, or the device in which it takes place, is called a clock. The progression of time thus measured is the standard time magnitude which, on the basis of current understanding, enters into physical relations. Speed or velocity, the measure of motion, is defined as distance per unit of time. In terms of the accepted reference systems, this means distance between coordinate locations divided by clock registration. In the two-photon case, the increase in coordinate separation during 1 unit of elapsed time is 2 units of space. The relative velocity of the 2 photons determined in the standard manner is then 2 natural units, that is, twice the velocity of light, the velocity at which each of the 2 objects is moving. In 1887, an experiment by Michelson and Morley compared the velocity of light traveling over round-trip paths in different directions relative to the direction of the Earth's motion. The investigators found no difference in the velocities, although the accuracy of the experiment was far greater than would be required to reveal the expected difference had it been present. This experiment, together with others which have confirmed the original findings, makes it necessary to conclude that the velocity of light in a vacuum is constant, irrespective of the reference system. The determination of velocity in the standard manner, dividing distance traveled by elapsed time, therefore arrives at the wrong answer at high velocities. As expressed by Capek, the initial impact of this discovery was shattering. It seemed to undermine the whole structure of theoretical knowledge that had been erected by centuries of effort. The following statement by Sir James Jean, I'm not sure if it's Jeans or John, written only a few decades after the event, shows what a blow it was to the physicists of that day. Quote, "For more than 2 centuries, this system of laws, the Newtonian universe, was believed to give a perfectly consistent and exact description of the processes of nature. Then, as the 19th century was approaching its close, certain experiments, commencing with the famous Michelson-Morley experiment, showed that the whole scheme was meaningless and self-contradictory." End quote. After a quarter of a century of confusion, Albert Einstein published his special theory of relativity, which proposed a theoretical explanation of the discrepancy. Contradictions and uncertainties have surrounded this theory from its inception, and there has been continued controversy over its interpretation in specific applications, and over the nature and adequacy of the various explanations that have been offered in attempts to resolve the paradoxes and other inconsistencies. But the mathematical successes of the theory have been impressive, and even though the mathematics antedated the theory and are not uniquely connected with it, these mathematical successes, in conjunction with the absence of any serious competitor and the strong desire of the physicists to have something to work with, have been sufficient to secure general acceptance. Now that a new theory has appeared, however, the defects in the relativity theory acquire a new significance, as the arguments which justify using a theory in spite of contradictions and inconsistencies, if it is the only thing that is available, are no longer valid when a new theory free from such defects makes its appearance. In making the more rigorous appraisal of the theory that is now required, it should be recognized at the outset that a theory is not valid unless it is correct both mathematically and conceptually. Mathematical evidence alone is not sufficient, as mathematical agreement is no guarantee of conceptual validity. What this means is that if we devise a theoretical explanation of a certain physical phenomenon and then formulate a mathematical expression to represent the relations pictured by the theory, or do the same thing in reverse manner, first formulating the mathematical expression on an empirical basis, and then finding an explanation that fits it. The mere fact that this mathematical expression yields results that agree with the corresponding experimental values does not assure us that the theoretical explanation is correct, even if the agreement is complete and exact. As a matter of principle, this statement is not even open to question. Yet, in a surprisingly large number of instances in current practice, including the relativity theory, mathematical agreement is accepted as complete proof. Most of the defects of the relativity theory are, as a conceptual scheme, have been explored in depth in the literature. A comprehensive review of the situation at this time is therefore unnecessary, but it will be appropriate to examine one of the long-standing paradoxes, which is sufficient in itself to prove that the theory is conceptually incorrect. Naturally, the adherents of the theory have done their best to resolve the paradox and save the theory. And in their desperate efforts, they have managed to muddy the waters to such an extent that the conclusive nature of the case against the theory is not generally recognized. Okay, we'll stop there. And so tomorrow we will get into his discussion of the conceptual inconsistencies of Einstein's relativity theory in this one avenue that is enough to kind of destroy the whole thing. Okay, have a great day, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.